maybe we can do a quick round of introductions, either in the chat. I think would probably be the easiest way to do that, since not everyone can speak. If you could kind of say your name, pronoun, and affiliation you're joining the summit with, that would be great. My name is Derek Gruen. I'm with Front Centered, and I use he, him pronouns. And maybe I'll ask the other panelists just to do a kind of quick introduction like that before we go into depth later. So Luzmila, could we start with you?
Hi, good morning. My name is Luzmila Free. Pronouns are she, her, and I am with the Latino Community Fund of Washington State.
Luzmila. And Sashi.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sashi Hayakawa. I use she and her pronouns, and I work for the New Economy Coalition.
Thank you. And I think Edgar will be joining as well as a panelist. But I think there are others at C2C who would, if you'd like, you'd love to join if we don't get Edgar, to make sure we are hearing your perspective. So this session is around regenerative livelihoods and community and worker-led economies. And we're going to have a few brief conversations or presentations, and then we'd like to have a conversation. And so we'll welcome comments, questions from everyone in the session. We know the platform doesn't make it super easy to always be in dialogue, but that is our goal. So I'm going to start with just a very brief framework from Front and Center, the project we worked on, and hand it over to our panelists. One way that Front and Center has started to engage in the conversation about regenerative livelihoods is to think about how do we put the pieces together of a new economy, and that really the element of building an economy that actually works for a just transition, knowing the economy we have isn't working now. So we engaged in a project last year with a couple of partners, the Poverty Action Network, the Budget and Policy Center, the People's Economy Lab, to start to think about what would it look like to put down a bigger, longer term agenda for an economy that meets our needs. And we did this through a participatory research process. We had a number of dialogues in the 2019 summit to articulate a set of principles and a set of conditions for which kind of a larger economic vision for our state that folks could work together on collaboratively would be possible. So principles like equity, around transformative change rather than just incremental change, and around regeneration, regenerative economy, and some of the key conditions around really understanding our past to be able to work forward through a different vision, building consensus on power and our theory of change, working across silos, working over the long term rather than just short term wins, and actually trying new things and experimenting, knowing that sometimes they won't work, but many times they will. So out of that work also came a number of strategies of where we need to be working that we aligned with the framework of the Climate Justice Alliance strategies. And those included how do we build a stronger backbone to support the work? How do we change the story? How do we build the bigger we across silos? How do we actually shift wealth and resources from where they've lived historically to the communities that have the least access? How do we build the new models of how the economy can work, and how do we actually change the rules? So you'll see alignment with that just transition strategy. And then there's a number of things that are happening right now and project initiatives kind of coming out of that framework, thinking about those strategies. I'm just going to highlight one to get us thinking, which was a new Economy Washington Frontline Fellowship, which Luzmila was a part of the selection committee for, which we're trying to kind of move on multiple strategies at once by supporting BIPOC community-led projects to build new economic models and self-determination for their communities in the economy. So it provides a grant and also a learning cohort to engage in the new economy. And it was really just a first cohort of a program that we would hope to expand and build the capacity of community leaders in in thinking about what are the new economic structures that we need that are more cooperative and regenerative and equitable. So briefly, the selection community included kind of an overlap of front and centered and other folks, including folks working on community business and worker issues. And then the fellows, just to introduce you briefly, are outlined here, include everything from unions to folks working on land issues, to food issues, and really building structures that put the community first. And so they're just at the outset, and you'll hear more about their work to come. So that was just a little bit of the background in terms of what some of the work can look like. But we fortunately have a great panel today that we want to introduce. We have, actually, Edgar's trying to get in, so I'll make sure to get him in. But we have our panel that you met, Sachi from the New Economy Coalition and Liz Mila from Latino Community Fund, who are both working in kind of both one in a local and a national sphere around building new economic models. And I think maybe to start, Sachi, if it's okay, I would turn it over to you first to give kind of the national landscape of what solidarity economy economic work is looking like, and the work of the New Economy Coalition that might provide kind of a good inspiration for us here. And then we'll hear from Liz Mila and C2C.
Wonderful. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Sachi. I work for the New Economy Coalition. And I'm going to just share a little bit about who we are and what we're up to. Let me first off just share my screen here. You can let me know, Liz Mila or Derek, give me a thumbs up if you can kind of see that. Okay, great. So,
yeah, actually, it's the little monitor looking button, if you see that one. You see that? The bottom.
Did that work? Oh, clicking it and clicking share.
Oh, really? Let's see. Is it a doc that I could share for you, or?
Yeah, totally. Let me just.
And thanks for all the introductions. If you want to look in the chat and who's here, I encourage you to kind of scroll through and who's in this session.
Okay, I shared the file with you, Derek.
Okay.
And then I can just start anyway. So, yeah, I work for the New Economy Coalition, and we are a network of 200 organizations across the US and Canada who are working on solidarity economy strategies. And I want to do a little bit of an overview around solidarity economies and why we use that language. But I think the first thing to say is that it's very much kin to just transition, regenerative economies, and many other sort of solutions-oriented, vision-driven frameworks and language that our movements are using right now. We particularly use solidarity economies, one, because it is language that is used around the entire world. It roots our work here, which in my assessment is very much the heart of empire within a global movement context. And that's a really, really important part of our theory of change in terms of economic transformation, is to be rooted in that global movement. It's a diversity of strategies and institutions that provide real alternatives to capitalism and center the well-being of people and communities and place over profit. And ultimately, the vision is that governance of our economies is held in the hands of those people who those economies support. That we have authentic self-determination in meeting our own community needs, and that the heart of all of that is cooperation. And so really the kind of core tenets are participatory democracy, cooperation, solidarity with each other, and ecologically regenerative systems. So examples of institutions and practices that you might have heard of or would be excited to learn more about include cooperative businesses and particularly a focus on worker-owned co-ops. Public banking has become a really, it's been pushed to the forefront with Representative Slabe and AOC introducing legislation around public banking. And also, I think these major divestment campaigns away from bad actor banks like Wells Fargo for the city of Seattle, and realizing that we really need alternatives that are not within the private sector. Participatory budgeting and solidarity budget campaigns, another Seattle relevant example, really exciting solidarity budget campaign that just happened, a broad coalition in the city. Community land trusts, which preserve affordable housing and housing cooperatives. And then there's a lot of different strategies within the finance sector to create more regenerative financing vehicles and community controlled finance. And then a slightly interesting and juicy, controversial one within our network, universal basic income. And I'm happy to talk about some of the debate over that one at some point. But those are examples of some of the strategies and tactics that that our members are using. Derek, could you go to the next slide, please? Great. So, yeah. So who is the New Economy Coalition? As I mentioned, we're a membership-based network and representing the solidarity economy movement in the United States. We believe in the aggregation of all these beautiful, powerful efforts happening in every corner of the country, and the deep necessity to build connections across those efforts for the resiliency of all of them, and to actually retain political and capital power to drive a transition from capitalism towards a solidarity economy. Next slide, please. So NEC has been in the last year or so in a deep visioning process, really in this moment where so many parts of the dominant economy, the ways in which it is failing, the vast majority of us are being revealed, knowing the necessity of a compelling and powerful vision to drive us through those cracks and towards something much more powerful. And so we've been really digging into sort of our 25-year vision of economic transformation. And the vision that we really had was, on the one hand, yes, about global system change, and on the other hand is about what is the daily experience of a person living within the economy that we're trying to create. And the vision we really had was that people could move, one person could move through their entire day having all of their basic needs met through cooperative institutions. So they live in a cooperative housing community where they aren't afraid of being evicted, where their kids go to school that have cooperative schools that have supplies that they need, or well-funded public schools, where they know where their food comes from, where they have healthcare and community clinics, transportation. Every single institution that touches the lives of people is authentically accountable to their well-being. And so we developed this vision, this image you have here that kind of anchors a lot of those values and sort of the facets of what we're trying to create. So next slide. So as we were talking about this vision, we were really grappling with what we felt like were the core challenges that we were running into in supporting our membership. And one of the challenges is that we're in the belly of the beast of capitalism, and a lot of these institutions that we're building are beautiful and powerful, but they are often disconnected, and or they get co-opted or they get shut down, and that really we needed to find ways to take our work to scale, to fortify it, to touch more people's lives, to ensure that these institutions were not one-time projects, but actually are part of a broader system change agenda. And when we say scale, we're not talking about cookie cutter, one size fits all type of organizing, nor are we talking about scale the way that we've seen sort of the devastating impacts of globalization and that sort of thing, but more scale through dense connections and diversity of institutions that are woven together in such a way that through their intersections, we are able to scale the network to a higher place of resiliency and impact. For that, we know that we need to have greater political power, we need to have more capital, and maybe the most important, we need to have a vision that people believe in. People can't, our friends at Center for Story-Based Strategy say people can't go anywhere they haven't been in their mind. And so we need to really reach the broadest audience possible in sharing the vision of a solidarity economy. I think so often our social movements are really clear about what we're against, but it's so much harder sometimes to articulate and build what we're for. And so that's really, that's kind of where we are really starting. So given all of that, our top line goals in the next 5 years are to incubate and support regional solidarity economy ecosystems that are interdependent in a way that they can stay resilient given shifting climate and economic conditions, popularize the vision of the solidarity economy, strengthen cooperation within our network, and we hope that that is teaching and sharing all kinds of things, but ultimately we also want to start cooperating in shared governance of capital and all kinds of other strategies, and build and mobilize political power for the solidarity economy movement. Let's go next slide and I can dig into these a little bit more and then stop there. So the core strategies that we really want to leverage towards these goals. The first is to tell the story of our freedom. We want to resource and invest in storytelling, storytellers, and narrative infrastructure of the solidarity economy movement. We believe that movements and transformation start with a compelling and beautiful story. We want to train the people. A lot of this knowledge of how economic and financial institutions and systems work has been intentionally kept out of the hands of folks with marginalized identities and with disenfranchised communities. And we want to stake a claim to that knowledge and to that governance. And also we want to do it differently. So we need to know the rules to be able to break them. And we have some really exciting plans for training programs. We want to contest for political power. We believe that transformative policy can give longevity to change, that sometimes an institution may come or go, but we hope that policy can help take stuff to scale and give it some longevity. And also that means attacking extractive competitors. For that means, for us, that is the Amazons and the whoever that just can't give us enough room to breathe to build something. And so we need to have our resistance work paired with our build work each step of the way. And control the capital. For us, this means both land and finance capital, and redistributing land and capital, and having clear land and capital strategies each step of the way for retaining retaining those resources for our communities and for practicing governance of that capital together. Movement generation says if we aren't prepared to govern, then we aren't prepared to win. And I think this really gets at the heart of how much we need to continue practicing governing capital and land together and in ways that are cooperative and democratic. So that's a ton of information. I'll stop right there and happy to check out the chat and looking forward to passing it to Luzmila.
Great, thanks so much, Sachi. We wanted to make sure we dove in and started kind of at the high level. As you know, we're kind of digging into the just transition framework in that element, particularly around work, or what we're talking about is really livelihoods. And seeing what others are doing, seeing what the national conversation looks like around building a new economy. I just want to check really quickly if Edgar is on. We're just kind of working to make sure you can get audio, video. And so I think he's on, but we'll continue to work that in the background. I think, make sure he can talk, or do you see a button to talk, Edgar, just to test that real quick? Okay.
So he can't respond because he hasn't shared it yet, but Edgar, if you can hear us, there should be a button on the upper right-hand corner that says share video and audio. Try to hit that and we'll get you going.
Thank you, Sharon. All right, and so now I think we'd love to transition and invite Luzmila to share thoughts. In particular, Luzmila's work around working with community businesses who are facing real and urgent challenges right now. And as we think about this big visionary economy, recognizing where we're at and the experiences that she is working to support, and how we think about kind of where we are in that big vision. I think you just heard about maybe where we want to be and how we make that transition. So Luzmila, thanks so much for joining us, and we're excited to hear from you.
No, thank you so much for having me. So before I answer that, I just want to make a quick introduction about what Latino community is. So our audience understands a little bit more the work that we are doing and what I'm about to explain. So Latino Community Fund is a nonprofit organization. We work across Washington State. We have, used to have 2 offices here in Washington, King County. Now we have one in Burien, and we have an office in Yakima, and also we are doing work in Wenatchee, and I believe also in Tri-City. Our work basically consists of outreach, awareness raising, capacity building, and leadership development. We do this through our different programs or initiatives, such as civic engagement, health, and economic empowerment. We also have a program that it's called the Alianza Group, and it's tailored to work specifically with youth. In addition to that, we physical sponsor other organizations. So within that, I work with the economic empowerment program. And through our different projects, we have been learning a lot of the different needs that the small Latino businesses have been encountering, particularly during the COVID-19. A lot of the issues that I'm about to mention, we already knew about those before, but they kind of became highlighted or exacerbated with the COVID-19. One of the things that we are noticing is, one of the issues that we are noticing is, for instance, access to capital, access to resources, particularly. As you know, there has been a lot of programs at the city level and also at the state level that have been offered. Some of the issues with that is that a lot of the businesses that we work with cannot have access to that. The reasons of that are different. Some of them is because the businesses, for instance, the owners might be documented or undocumented individuals, and that affects their ability to, to benefit from those resources. And in addition to that, within the community, we notice that there is a lot of misunderstanding in terms of what a loan is and what a grant is. There's also language barriers in terms of how to navigate the system, how to understand the different terms that are offered within the grants or the loans. There's also a lot of need in terms of guidance for the community or for the business owners in order to apply. And this is something that takes a lot of time. Sometimes also there's another barriers that we have been noticing in terms of access to technology. We have been encountering a lot of businesses in which the owners, they don't even know how to open a Facebook account or a Google account for that matter. So as you can, as I'm mentioning, there's different levels for that in terms of the different barriers. Now, what we have been trying to do is have been raising awareness, have been talking to the government at the city and state level about these needs and trying to find ways how to meet the needs of the community at some point. I know it is very difficult, and particularly given the circumstances, but these are things that have been noticed before, but this is something that we are trying to say, cut their attention and trying to improve the way how the system has been operating. Another, in a different area, another barriers that we have been seeing is also a lot of the business owners, they don't know how to negotiate with their landlords or with suppliers. So there's another, that's another issue. We have been trying to support them, even providing them with access to attorneys for free, because sometimes they don't have that ability to pay for that. One thing that we have been doing is trying to really encourage people to apply for grants rather for loans. And the reason for this is many of the businesses, it's interesting, but a lot of the businesses that we have been dealing with, they didn't make a loan to open their business. It was using basically personal savings in order to do that. And we feel like, well, at least I feel, I take responsibility for that it shouldn't be fair for them to incur into more debt. They already have the debt, so they're incurring due to the COVID-19. Now to add another debt, that will be very difficult for them. Another issue that we have been seeing is that there is a difference between a small Latino business or a small business that is based, let's say, in Capitol Hill versus a small business that is in a different area, such as, I don't know, White Center or Burien. There is a difference between that. And within the system, what we are noticing is that there is that lack of observing that difference. Not a business that operates in Capitol Hill cannot operate at the same, a business that operates in White Center doesn't operate in the same way of a business that operates in Capitol Hill. They don't have the technology skills to save, for instance. And that is something that we are also trying to bring that attention to the government as well. Yes, those are some of the different issues that we have noticing. In terms of technology, as I mentioned before, a lot of them, they don't know how to utilize it. how to use Square, how to adapt to new digital technologies. And it has been a very difficult task for us to try to bring them, to that new level. One of the things that we are trying to do moving forward, and actually this is something that we have been trying to do even before COVID, but now during this period, we are using the excuse of COVID to kind of emphasize that, is to try to encourage a lot of our businesses to kind of adapt to new technologies. However, within that, there's some dangers within that, such as we have been learning that some businesses have been trying to utilize other kind of like delivery programs. And apparently, not apparently, within those, they seem to have some issues in terms of fees. Apparently, there are some companies like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and so on, that they are kind of like adding a lot of fees, and that also affects their profits. So having said that, one thing that we are trying to do as well is to encourage a lot of our businesses to take an act, be a little more active in terms of participation within the system. Because a lot of the decisions that are being made without them. So what we are trying to do is to increase the participation and the representation within discussions that ultimately affects them. Another thing that also we are trying to do is to encourage them also not just to be part of the implementation part, but also at the planning stages. So that's one of the aspects that we are really, really trying to encourage, and that's one of the part of our actually strategy within our program to increase their participation in order to, find better inclusive and more holistic decisions. I'm so sorry, Derek. I see you moving, and I don't know if I'm going out, beyond my time.
You should probably transition to Edgar when you're ready to, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, I'm just wrapping it up. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mila. I mean, I think we heard a lot of consistent themes, even between the two of, the extractive economy we live in terms of issues of capital, technology, even access to decision making, and some of the strategies that we heard from Sachi. And next, would like to bring in Edgar Franks from Familias Unidas por la Justicia, organizing farm workers, a farm worker union, to talk a little bit about your approach to both kind of being in the extractive economy and trying to transition to a more worker-led economy. And Edgar, can you, is it working? Hello? Can you talk? Okay, good.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
All right. I don't know what's going on with my video, but we'll just go like this. Yeah, those are some pretty big questions about the role farm workers play in the extractive economy. But it's one that we've been kind of grappling with since 2013, when I was a part of C2C still, about getting ready to organize with Familias Unidas. At that time, we didn't know it was going to be a union. However, I think in the farm worker context and agricultural context, farm workers and immigrants have always been on the bottom rung of the ladder in the agricultural system. And even since the founding of the plantation system and agricultural industrialized system in the United States, which has always been based on exploitation of labor and resources and extraction for the benefit of a few. That system is still very much in place in the United States. It's very resource intensive, where you get mega farms now And here when we're in Yakima, you see app orchards that are like 2,000, 5,000, 6,000 acres. That's just one farm, and then there's many more others just like that, and just the immense amount of extraction that happens in water and land use, all for the benefit of the apple industry. Then you top it off with the exploitation of labor, of bringing in either H-2A workers and paying them the least amount of money, and extract all their energy that they have in their person for the profits of the industry. And then also the immigrant workforce that has been there for a long, long time, that has been exploited in that manner as well. So, and here in Skagit, it's the same system, only in berries, where you have these big mega farms and corporations that basically run the whole economy, without taking into account the effects it's doing now into the environment, the resources, and to labor. They see it only as everything can be replaced if you throw money into it. But I think that since the foundation of the Union of Familias Unidas, we've tried to bring in that analysis of how, if this is the system that has been in place for hundreds of years, what is it, and what's the role of workers that are organized to change the system? Is it to find concessions within the system? And we know that union contracts and collective bargaining agreements are part of concessions that will be made, and sometimes they're seen as they're one step in creating a systemic change. But we want to think beyond just the collective bargaining agreement about how we can really transform it, not work within the system, or create our own system. So with the union contracts, I think it gives us the ability and the political power to start moving towards those changes. I think Sachi was laying out in the beginning about changing the rules and creating a political environment for movements to thrive. And I think we're an example of that. It wouldn't have happened. I think our fight was complemented with the fight for $15 an hour that was happening in 2013, 2014, 2015. So there wasn't a political environment that was set out by grassroots movements that we greatly benefited from, because it opened up the consciousness to the general public. When we had to take on big players, we had to take on the Farm Bureau, Driscoll's, the farm where we were organizing at. So we directly had to confront that power somehow, and with limited resources and money, we knew it was going to take a lot of effort to really put a dent into that. And one of the ways that we were able to is by creating almost a solidarity network that really also was looking into changing the food system and cared about farm workers. So I think right now we're at that point where a lot of these issues have been historic. And then with, again, I think Luzmila mentioned about the COVID crisis really spotlighting a lot of the injustices. I think that really became apparent this last summer and this last spring with all the strikes and the wildfires that were happening in Eastern Washington, where it makes the moment and the political environment exist now, where we have shown the exploitative nature of agriculture and the industry, and how it's time to transition away from that. And us as a union, what's the role that we play by organizing workers and politicizing in some sense the workers, and showing workers that they have the capacity and the ability to really change things. So eventually I think we want to think of the mindset, change the mindset of being just work, of being exploitable labor to human beings that what would it take to change and really challenge the system. So within Familias Unidas, there's members that wanted to take a stab at it. So they moved on from the union using that experience and the political consciousness raising that they had during the unionizing campaign to try to see if they were able to establish and show people what a just farm would look like when people have no bosses or no managers, no owners of the land, people working collectively without the exploitative practices that is instilled in the agricultural system. So that's kind of how we've been supporting, I think, the transformation of a food system, even though it's still an ongoing process and it's still, it's still very, very new process. But that's the way that we see that for farm workers to transform the system and gain power is showing people that it's possible for workers to lead themselves and run their own farms in a way that doesn't extract the resources or extract labor the way that it's currently going. So Tierra y Libertad, the cooperative, is an experiment with 5 years in the making already and being successful, even though there are still a lot of challenges and still need a lot of support, but it's still that history is very important to capture, I think, because I think we're showing that it's possible to really change the system when almost everybody tells us that it's not possible. So we have 65 acres in Everson, Washington. C2C has been one of the catalysts for that, along with Familias Unidas and many other organizations. So I think from a worker perspective, to use a Marxist term, the seizing the means of production is what I think for us is the way to move forward, to help transform the land, make it healthy, and healthy for the planet and healthy for humans, and have a healthy and solidarity economy going on and in our right here in our in our corner of the state. But it all comes with with fight and dedication and risking something. It's not easy, but it's possible. So for us, the just transition framework and regeneration and all these things are things that we hold really near and dear and try to practice it within our union.
Well, thank you very much, Edgar. I thought that was amazing, and I think collectively you all really illustrated the challenge of moving from that exploitative work to more cooperative work, and the challenges that are being faced right now by community business, by workers, and some of the models of things we need to do to actually contest and build the new. So we really want to invite questions. We have just a couple minutes left, but are there questions that folks want to ask to the panel? You may have a video button. If not, you can type in, or you can see if there's a button to join. But anything folks want to ask Luzmila, Edgar, Sachi? And maybe while we see about that, I just have maybe one question between Edgar and Luzmila, like just thoughts on the overlap of that work of kind of the farm worker organizing with the micro business, like self-funded, startup small business. Do you guys see a connection to your work, or is there a bridge there in terms of the strategies and what needs?
Well, yeah, definitely. I see a connection between the work, the workers, the farmers, and the small businesses. I know for sure one thing that I have been always trying to figure it out is how to connect small farmers, small Latino farmers, to work directly with the small Latino businesses that we have here in Seattle. I feel like there is a disconnect in terms of that, and to complete that, I am trying to figure out the way also how to. I'm sorry, I cannot help it to wear my health hat, but also how to make provide better access to fruits and vegetables, better products to the community. I'm sorry, I might be going a little bit off here, but just hear me out. I mean, I know that for a lot of for Latino communities, having access to fresh vegetables is a very difficult issue. It's very difficult. So to me, when I go to the farmer's market, I understand why a vegetable, it can be very expensive. It's very time consuming, particularly if you're not utilizing specifically mechanized, through mechanized process. So I think that there is a way how we can connect directly with the farmers and how to, help for the prices to go down, but in a way that everybody will benefit from it. At least that's what I think. I don't know. What do you think, Edgar?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've I think the cooperative members have always tried to keep in mind about what would be our contribution to not just Skagit and Whatcom County, but to the whole state. And I think that opening up those marketplaces for people to have access to the fresh fruits and vegetables that are grown in this cooperative farm, very important. But also, I think far beyond that, I think the understanding of
You lost Edgar. I wonder if there's some kind of a timer, but I will say we are at time. I do think there's a really important point here on just how we move food to the center of our economy too, just as the the principal piece. So really grateful for our panelists, for Sachi and Luzmila and Edgar for sharing. I think there's so much work in this space, and what we want to explore is how Front Center can also provide a forum for exchange between groups that are working on new economic models, and hope to, you're going to get a poll tomorrow to talk about what issues you want to work on moving forward, and if this is of interest, say that so we can help create space and support you all. So anything else for Sachi or Luzmila before we close? Sachi put some resources in the chat there, so check that out.
Yeah, check that out. I would just also, I was excited about where Edgar was headed around setting up supply chains across all of these small businesses and creating those circular economies. And I think that's the work that NEC wants to also support facilitating. So I think there's a lot here for us to collaborate on moving forward. Thanks, Derek, for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Yes,
all.
thank you.
Okay, and we're going to reconvene in the next session. So the next session start at 12:40. So back to the sessions, but right now we're taking a lunch break. Oh, there's Edgar, but we lost you, Edgar. Thank you so much for joining. We're just closing out. Any last words?
No, I was just gonna say apart from the chains are creating those chains of supply, having an understanding of and spreading the word of why cooperatives are necessary, and how they differentiate from just a regular business.
Thanks, Edgar. All right, so sorry we have to close because I feel like we're getting to the rich stuff, but I want to make sure you guys at least get lunch.
The importance of the river to myself and Duwamish people is this is one of the main waterways that Duwamish people use. This place had a great abundance of all types of things that Native people needed, from reeds for mats to clams to salmon and all types of different fish. The wealth of Seattle was built on the back of the Duwamish River. What it also has done is created a very toxic area. It's important to find that balance for not just Duwamish community, but also the communities of South Park and Georgetown and the industries, so everybody can thrive. That's the point.
The mission of the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition is to ensure a Duwamish River cleanup that's accepted by and benefits the community, and that is also protective of fish, wildlife, and human health. Back in 2001, the Duwamish River was identified as a Superfund site by the Environmental Protection Agency. And that means that it's one of the most toxic, hazardous waste sites in the entire nation.
Today we're at Terminal 117, which is Port of Seattle property. And this is one of what they call the early action cleanups on the Duwamish River. It's one of the hottest spots within the Superfund site that needed to be cleaned up right away because of imminent threats to the environment and people's health. There were burned out hulks of ships that had been left behind in the river. There were abandoned trucks literally in the river. There was trash, metal, garbage everywhere. So in 2001, Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition started. I was asked to coordinate their efforts, but really Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition is just that. It's a coalition of many different affected residents, tribes, social justice and environmental activists, neighborhoods. The Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition is the people who are most directly impacted by the state of this river and by the plans to clean it up.
The role that DRCC has, with the communities that we work with and for is to basically amplify the voice of these communities, build power, empower them. It's not to actually be the voice of the communities, or represent the communities. How can we make sure the communities have a seat at the table, and when they are there with other decision makers, federal agencies, state agencies, the mayor, city council, King County Council, how can they actually guide this process and give meaningful input about what they need and what they want?
I originally was drawn to the Georgetown neighborhood because housing in Georgetown was still very affordable and was able to get into something that would be a good place for long term and to raise my family here. Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition has really helped lead our community in the cleanup of the river by giving our community members a voice with agencies and with the process to get the river cleaned up, and in the process has also given our community a voice to go out and work towards other things to make it a better place to live.
The work that DRCC does changes all the time. We don't have a secret formula to do things because it depends on what the community needs and wants. What's been very successful is to talk to community leaders, showcase their expertise and their knowledge. We basically give the community technical advice, and then we have community leaders and community members translate that information both figuratively and literally to their fellow community members and neighbors.
When we came to South Park the first time, we saw the proximity that this neighborhood has to the river, but it took some years that I started to realize and learn how polluted the river was. I started to volunteer. I wanted to get more involved after I started learning about all the pollution that it has, and I want the people to understand, because many of them who didn't speak English, I want them to know about it and to realize that we need to take some precautions when playing with family around it. Is it cold, Madison, the water? When I started to get involved with the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition, I saw that they really were looking to work with community in an intentional way. And that's what we have been working for, hosting EPA meetings in Spanish, being the first times in the whole United States.
The DRCC has a program to explain to people that the rivers is not good for fishing. If I see some fisher, I came to talk to them, and more I convince them. So I'm very happy, yeah.
It's up to us to empower these groups that we work with so that when we're done with this in 15 or 20 years, they are stronger and they can stand on their own and they're working together better.
I believe in the work that the RCC have been doing, trying to involve and trying to empower community members.
If we do it right here on the Duwamish, and we do things, looking at them through an environmental justice and an equity lens, that's gonna set a precedent. Those things can be replicated in one way or the other, in other areas that need to also be protected and restored around Puget Sound and the Salish Sea.